HIPcast is brought to you by Enterprise Social Record, and today's episode is brought to you by Solarity. 80% of healthcare data is underutilized. Solarity is changing that. Our intelligent automation engine quickly and accurately identifies and analyzes all patient data, no matter its source or format. The result? Faster, more informed clinical decisions for physicians and better outcomes for patients. Solarity continues to revolutionize healthcare delivery, mitigate costs, and improve patient outcomes. Identify, validate, and abstract data from any source with Solarity. Visit them at solarityhealth.com to learn more.
Well, I saw Solarity at the THIMA annual meeting this past March, and that was pretty fun. Today we have a different type of guest, and we're going to have different conversation. We definitely a credentialed HIM professional who has been doing this for a long time, more than 30 years. Today we're going to talk about component associations, and we're going to talk about state level volunteering and all the things that Ann is incredibly skilled at doing. And tell me, how many states do you have under your purview now? 5?
7. I have 7, yes.
Bless you.
So as we get into the conversation, you'll know that Ann's conversation is coming from the experience of leading 7 states. So I'm going to go ahead and read Ann's bio. Ann Nowlin is an RHIT. She's been a credentialed member of AHIMA for over 33 years, bringing nearly 25 years of experience in office coordinator and executive director roles for multiple component associations. She's a proud recipient of the 2020 AHIMA Leadership Triumph Award and the Kansas HIMA Outstanding Member Award. Currently, Ann serves as the co-chair of the AHIMA Component Relations Advisory Council and is contributing as a member of the AHIMA 2025 Conference Planning Committee. Welcome to the show, Ann.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I participate in one component state association, and to have 7, I saw Wanda at our meeting back in March and gave her a big old hug, and then I whispered in her ear and said, I don't know how you didn't murder people after 30 years of this.
I miss Wanda. We worked together for many years, and she was a wonderful person and executive director.
She's fantastic. She's doing a lot. She left our meeting to go hang out with some grandbabies and just living her best life right now in retirement. But one of the things that we love to do is ask our guest about your HI journey. How in the world did you end up in HI, and then what led you? And let me pause there before we go. If anybody in our audience is listening and you hear us say CAs, component associations, so that's the state component associations of AHIMA or AHIMA. I still spell it out because I'm old. But you're going to hear us throw CA out there, and that's what that is a component association. So back to the question. So tell us about your HI journey and how you ended up in the CA world.
Well, it's one of those stories that you would never plan on or imagine. Actually, when I graduated, well, let me step back 1 minute. My sister was an RHIA, and she said, you really need to get into this profession. It's just right up your alley. So I did. And after I graduated, I was strongly encouraged to volunteer with my component association, which I did. And I started out with volunteering on the annual meeting planning committee. And I had so many wonderful volunteers who guided, were guiding me and teaching me the ropes. And so I had so much fun doing that. And then, I don't know, sometime after that, the Kansas HIMA started the office coordinator position. They had not had one, and they wanted to kind of test the waters and see if it would work. And I applied for that. And of course, as you know, received that or got that position. So loved doing that, and very part-time. And so it worked out from my family perspective. I had young kids at the time. And so what led me to help other component associations was one of the Kansas board members moved to Colorado and was elected to their board. And a few years later, their executive director stepped down, and that board member said, "Hey, Ann, would you even consider applying for this?" And I'm like, gosh, I don't know. Can I do this? And, back then it wasn't, remote work wasn't as common as it is today. I'm like, okay, how are we going to do this from, with me living in Kansas and doing work for Colorado? So ended up, they said, you know what, let's try this. What can it hurt? And they hired me to do it. And there were a lot of things that we had to figure out back then, almost 25 years ago. We did a lot of faxing and mailing of board packets and things like that, very manual back then. But we figured it all out, and it worked out great. And it was just how I expanded to other states is board members talk. You go to an AHIMA conference or a summer leadership meeting or whatever, and board members from component associations just talked, and they said, "Is that really working for Ann to live here and provide you service?" And they said, "Absolutely." So that's how it expanded to the 7 component associations.
Wow. I think you're the first that's had a family member, your sister, that was already credentialed that brought you in. A lot of us have the story to where we thought we were going down a clinical path, and then we accidentally saw a patient naked and said, "Nope, not doing this."
Not for me.
Well,
no.
So to have a family member I didn't know that your sister was an RHA. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, I think Ann returned the favor years later, didn't you?
I did. So Teresa is my sister, and she is now the executive director for a component association too. So it just kind of worked out that
I've never made that connection.
Yeah. So her
Mm-hmm.
sister brought her into the profession, and then she brought her into running a component association.
I've never made that connection. That's amazing.
I'm going to get you now.
Yeah.
Over here to this side of things.
That's right.
Yes. And your sister's role was in a hospital before. Is that true? Did she retire from a hospital? Okay.
Yes, she did. She was in quality. Well, she started out in medical records back then, and then went down quality and risk path, and then stepped away to take care of elderly parents, et cetera. And then when she was coming back in, she was like, "Okay, what do I want to do now?" And I'm like, "Well, how about this?" So.
Yeah,
that's a way to bring you pain and suffering. Here's how you do it.
Right. So it just worked out. You never know what path you're going to go down, and the connections you make. So
and I love that. The connections are number one probably for me networking. When I strongly encourage, as you said earlier, when I strongly encourage people to volunteer, one of the maybe the top benefit that I tell them is the networking. You get to meet so many amazing people that become lifelong friends, but beyond that, you also know who's a subject matter expert in this thing that I don't know much about, because health information is everywhere and we can't know everything. So who do I call about this thing? And you have a relationship established,
That is exactly right. It's you just never know how those connections are going to work for you. Not I don't know if that's the right word, but connections are so important.
So important.
Yeah. They may only be a friend for life and never have to connect you professionally, but they are so important. And I want to, this is not on the, like in our prep document, this is not part of it. I just want to say to the folks that are listening, if you're struggling in your component association, Ann at least knows trends of what's going on across 7 states. And if you include the state that your sister serves, that you've got 8 states that you have real meaningful information about. And so your voice, Ann, just because of the role that you've created in those so many states, you actually have an opportunity to share unified conversation, and you've seen what works in multiple states. So I just want to say, to the states that are struggling. You're not struggling alone.
Right.
Everything is hard. It's not, this is not, it's just hard everywhere, especially in healthcare. So, and everyone's budget's tight. So you're not alone. And Anne is doing that times 7. I'm just saying, so, but I would like to kind of move on into the discussion that we were talking about. What's the importance of health information professionals volunteering at state associations? Again, I'll remind you, component associations, or CAs, will refer to the same thing as state associations, and we might go old school and say CSA.
That's right.
Which was component association. So, but what's the value? What's the importance of those of our professionals volunteering at that state level?
I can't reiterate this enough, the importance of volunteering. I gave my personal example, when I came out of college and volunteering, and how that led me down a different path, a path I never would have imagined. But working with 7 component associations, it takes a village to accomplish all of our goals. It's not 1 or 2 people doing the work. It's everyone coming together. So we really need volunteers to accomplish everything we need to accomplish in a year. So that's one. And we always have great professionals, a great team of professionals come together, and everyone's sacrificing their time and their energy to do this. So if everyone can take a small piece of the pie, we can get the job done. Obviously, it's a way to give back to your professional community. I think another important piece to volunteering is it keeps you abreast of what's going on in the profession. It could be advocacy. It could be, there's so many things that like maybe copy fees are an issue in your state or something. Anyway, just keeping on top of what's happening in the profession and in healthcare. And then we talked about this already, but connecting, you never know who you're going to connect with. Right. 1, to make a lifelong friend, but 2, professional connections, like down the road. Maybe you're looking for a job, or someone has a job opening. They're like, I remember working with her on the Component Association board, and he was so on top of things, would be perfect for this job. So there's always that possibility. Mm-hmm. And then, and we talked about this already, the keeping on top of what's happening in the profession in healthcare. And I mentioned advocacy. Advocacy is the one that comes to mind the most, because like I said, you may be dealing with an issue in your state, and that component association will help on that topic. They may meet with legislators about that topic, like copy fees or something like that. So, and then again, I'll repeat that, lifelong friendships. I've made such great friends in this role, lifelong, and I've heard many other volunteers say that about their volunteer role. And I volunteer with AHIMA, like on a task force or on the planning committee for the conference. And again, we meet great people. And again, it takes a team to pull off an AHIMA annual conference, or maybe the work of another task force. So I truly believe in volunteering. It's a must.
Absolutely. I also think, I wonder if the just regular member that's never volunteered and just a committee, a task force, let alone go all the way to a president role or delegate, something larger, I don't know that the standard member knows the amount of effort and work that goes behind the scenes in a CA. At AHIMA, there's so many volunteers at the national level that are doing so much work that keeps this thing going, but it also keeps our our membership dues low because we don't have to hire 1,000 staff members to do all this. So it takes the volunteers to keep this thing rolling. And you know, we're just fresh off of our annual meeting a few weeks ago, and it's that member, we call it the member engagement committee, which is our program committee. We couldn't have done it without them. You know, they'd roll their sleeves up and they were moving chairs and bussing tables and getting laptops going and doing everything. And but I love those people. Like we were texting of, did you make it home? And are you good? Everybody happy. So it's you're right. It takes a village, but it also provides a village.
Absolutely.
And I'll say about this, it's interesting that you're talking about the volunteers and how we don't have to hire staff. And immediately I thought of AHIMA and how our finances have been with AHIMA and how we have so many volunteers that do so much. Imagine how that would be on AHIMA to try to fund if they weren't using the volunteers. But then at the state level, that's really so true. But from this side where, you know, where I'm sitting, I'm thinking about the people that are newer to, whether it's to the profession or the consideration of volunteering. If someone that is a volunteer, if someone that has served in any capacity at their state level, if someone that's done that before asks you to participate, it's not just because they need a volunteer for a seat. They believe in you. They believe that you can do it. So they're not asking arbitrarily. To your point a minute ago, Anne, about, hey, I did a project with that person, you know, on a previous project, and they were just really great at getting everything done. And they were really focused on this, and they'd be a great add to this opportunity that we have. So if you've never volunteered, or if you have, or if you have volunteered and it's been a long time, if someone in your state or even at the national level asks you to volunteer for a particular thing, definitely give it all the consideration, but understand that they're asking you that because they believe in you.
Right. Exactly right. That's a great point. And Seth, to your point about people not understanding what it takes to pull an event off, or, you know, whatever it is. I've worked with so many professionals over the years who have said, after they volunteered for something, whatever it is, they come up to me and they're like, oh my goodness, I did not realize every moving piece of an annual meeting or whatever it is. And, you know, they're just so appreciative of that opportunity to volunteer and see behind the scenes. And also even the cost of putting on a meeting or something like that. It just, and as the saying says, until you walk a mile, you know, in someone's shoes, or whatever it is, you know, that's exactly it. You know, volunteering until you do it, you know, you may not understand. And we do try and look, you know, some of you may be saying, I just don't have time to volunteer. And I totally get that. But we're really trying to focus on micro volunteering opportunities. So it's not necessarily a long commitment. It may be a month working on a membership recruitment and retention project or something like that. So don't be scared or shy away thinking that it's a huge time commitment. And again, when everybody pulls together, we find that time commitment isn't as bad, you know, again, having the team work together.
I like that idea, micro volunteering. It's also just from a perception perspective, when you hear that, it's like, okay, yeah, I can do this for 3 weeks or 4 weeks, an hour a week, 2 hours a week, whatever it may be, and knock that out. I like that. We're going to have to put that into the state of Tennessee somehow, because our board members are serving on a multi-year term, so that's a hard ask to get folks to say, hey, you want to do president-elect, president,
the next
past
5
president.
years of your life.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
That's a tough ask. But you're spot on. That micro volunteering thing is a great idea, and it also hooks them. So there's the, for those that are listening that are considering a micro volunteer role, guess what? That's us getting our hook in you, because you're going to love it. You're going to love the people. Will. And that, like I say, we just came off our annual meeting, and I'm still riding high that I got to spend all that time with those folks and get to see people that I see Shannan virtually through our podcast, and then random ideas. I call her and say, hey, let's create this business or let's create this product. But I got to see her at our annual meeting.
Exactly.
And we had several members that I've volunteered with for years that they're going through some tough times personally. And there's several of them that I walked up to and said, here's your morning hug, because I just want you to know that you're loved, and that we're praying for you, we're cheering for whatever the situation may be. And that is crucial to have a happy life, is to have that village.
Yes,
I agree. And you do get to know people and their family, like grandkids or kids or whatever, and the struggles they're going through. I agree, Seth. I love going to the meetings, the annual meetings, because you get to reconnect, catch up with everyone, and it's just great to do that in person and not virtually.
Yes.
Yeah, we always end our we have an honoree celebration, and we do our scholarship.
Away.
Oh, I'm giving them away.
Oh, let's hear this.
It's a commercial. It's an advertisement for anybody in the country to come to our honoree celebration at our meeting, because it is a blast. So we do scholarships, and then we give out awards. We do a live auction for our foundation. And then we have a dance party, and is one of the, this year the DJ was amazing. He had lights and music, and we danced. And I remember being a student my first year in Tennessee, and I will not name the professor, but I think everybody knows the professor. She made my papers look like they had been stabbed to death, because everything was red. I mean, it was, I write as I speak, if that tells you anything about my writing skills.
Fair.
But she was so proper. She was a very elegant lady, just absolutely wonderful professor, until she graded my papers, and then we had problems. But she would come to that first year when I was a student at the dance party, and I walk in there at almost midnight, and she's shoes off, just having a good time dancing. And I'm like,
she's taking the tail feathers.
She was, and I was like, how fun is this? And it's just a blast.
That's a great point. The students, when they come to the meeting, and they're used to seeing their professors, so professional, but when we have a reception or a party, they see them let their hair down and have a good time, and which makes the students realize they're just real people. Yes, they're your teacher, your professor, but they're just people. So
yeah. Well, and I'll finish up a little bit of what Seth was saying, and there is something that is very sacred about the end of our night, but you have to come to the meeting to find out. How about that?
I wasn't going there.
Deal.
I wasn't going to bring it up.
You were going, and that's why I was shutting you down.
We do have a very special moment at the end of the night that's a tradition, and it really brings us all together. And even our DJ this year, as he announced what we were doing and the song, and he said, this is something special. You guys are amazing. So it was great. So come to our honoree celebration. It's a blast. But all right, final question.
Yes.
And then we'll think of more final questions. But the final prepared question: what does the future look like for our state associations?
Oh, that's a good one. I just truly feel that CAs are extremely important. They are the grassroots of our profession. And they are the personal and professional connections to our members at a state level. That includes networking, education. We talked advocacy, and they are the connection on those important issues related to our profession. And again, advocacy or whatever it is. And I personally feel that volunteerism has declined in the past several years for various reasons. COVID did affect it for sure. But I personally feel that our members are doing so much more in their day jobs with less people. And so it's tough for some people to commit to a volunteer role. So I think for component associations to stay viable, we have to be creative and think about ways we can make that volunteer role easier. So micro volunteer opportunities. Do you look at restructuring your board, make it smaller, responsibilities, changing those responsibilities, spreading out those responsibilities, or whatever that looks like. Just trying to figure, and maybe committee structure, you want to look at that, just trying to figure out what supports that volunteer and gives the members of that component association what they need, whether that's education or networking or whatever. So just thinking out of the box, I think, is going to be crucial for the CAs. And I personally, in my role, try and figure out how to make that volunteer role inviting and easier for that volunteer who I know is stretched and at their max capacity with their day job and family and et cetera, et cetera. So I think just trying to be creative on how what we're doing and how we're structured.
Yeah, the CAs are crucial, and there's a lot of pressures on the CAs these days. The financial health of a lot of our component associations it's not great, and the expenses are going up. We were talking before we started recording, or the state meeting here in Tennessee. We used to be in Nashville, and everybody loved it because it's the center of the state, and Nashville's a fun little town. I remember 100 years ago, we'd take a party bus down to downtown Nashville and go to all the honky tonks and sing karaoke and do all that stuff. But Nashville, we can't afford Nashville anymore.
Right.
It's just not possible to afford it. So we had to make a shift. And the financial pressures are growing, unfortunately, against the CAs, but the importance of the CAs is also growing because as we stretch thinner, as people spread out into other industries, we need each other to keep this thing going.
Exactly.
There's a section of, and I have to be careful with how I say this, but there's a group within AHIMA, the staff, that I think truly gets it. And they truly understand the value of the CAs, and they fight for the CAs. And I want everybody at the national level to understand how important the CAs are to the member and to those folks within that state, because that's what holds us together. The national meeting is great, and I've met so many fun people at the national meeting, but my family is Tennessee.
Seth, you just brought up and I agree with you. The states are definitely the grassroots. That is really what makes this profession operate. The organization operates through AHIMA, but this profession operates on the backs of the states, period. Like that is just how it is. It's not even a slam at anybody. That is a 100% true statement. We do the work in the states for our profession. Like we're the industry SMEs. But Seth, what you just said made me think there's a lot of, right, wrong, or indifferent. This is not a political position here. The current administration, the Trump administration, second Trump administration, is making a lot of changes in the bureaucratic components, and healthcare will be impacted by that. If you don't have that national level guidance on things, every state, which we do have our own privacy and security and our own release of information rules and things like that, but that should and likely will grow, not should, but likely will grow in every state because we're responding to, now we don't have federal guidance at this level for value-based models or whatever it is, release of information. And if you're looking at this from a futuristic perspective, Seth, your point just made me think these states will be the profession, period. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that is AHIMA will be more dependent and reliant on the volunteers across the country to be the aggregator of voice for possibly 50 different rules about a topic. So their positioning is likely going to change, because now, instead of being some creator of things, they're going to need to aggregate from all of us, which they do aggregate from us. It just isn't necessarily. Anyway, I'm not going to get into any
I know where you're going. It just things pulled.
I'm just saying that in our current landscape at the federal level, it's going to impact us, and states will become even more important to the national level scene because they're going to have to aggregate. So they're going to have to rely even heavier on the states, which is a big deal.
It is.
And because of that, I do think that relationship with AHIMA and the component associations is crucial. We need to keep nurturing that. Yep. We need each other and for different reasons. And that's a great example, Shannan, that you just gave.
Yeah. That was a good thought, Seth. So thanks for putting that in my head.
Didn't even know I did it.
It's really good though. It's so important. I love that we were having this conversation about the importance of states, and then you mentioned, how things are and change and whatever. So, in our current landscape, we need to be taking charge in I don't know, maybe a little bit different way. Maybe the relationship is just a little bit different in that we've got to have SMEs for everything in the states that are feeding information to one aggregate source at that national level, because it's going to vary. So
it should be the House. The House of Delegates should be that part. So hopefully the House continues to learn their role and to reshape their role and in the governing the profession, and we as sending delegates to the House should be providing that feedback up, saying here's what's going on in the state of Tennessee.
That's a good point.
I bet it's going on in Kansas. I bet it's going on in Colorado. Here's how we solved it. That's what we got to build that back with good volunteers.
Right.
So this is another commercial. Make sure you volunteer.
Exactly. Can't stress that enough.
Yeah, we have the structure. We just have to make the relationships I guess look a little different. But well, this was fantastic, Anne. Thank you so much. Any final thoughts?
I'm going to say it one more time. Volunteering is absolutely important for so many reasons. And I hope who's ever watching this that you will, if you haven't volunteered before, please strongly consider it. You're not on your own. We always have a team working together. So I hope you will take the opportunity to get involved in your component association at whatever level. If it's a micro volunteer position, great. That's awesome.
That's awesome.
And thanks for having me.
Absolutely.